Our focus on today's show is Nigeria's power sector. We'll take a look at estimated billing and consumer complaints, and the president of the Consumer Advocacy Foundation of Nigeria will join me for this discussion. You can join the conversation with the hashtag Beyond Markets, and you can follow my Twitter handle too at Esther O. Awuni. Now, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission says the general complaints received by power distribution companies in the first quarter of the year were typically around metering, estimated billing, and service interruptions. Sola Salako, president of the Consumer Advocacy Foundation of Nigeria, joins me as we discuss how these issues impact power consumers and how best to seek redress. Sola, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I was quite happy when I saw the report from the NERC capturing activities in the first quarter and also capturing consumer challenges that consumers faced and how they were going around those problems. But from your own perspective, I mean, looking at some of the numbers from the NERC, up to 59% of the issues that came to the fore were all around estimated billing and inadequate number of meters. What are your thoughts in terms of how the quarter played out?
That should be pretty accurate. Most of the complaints that we get is mostly probably up to 80%, 70%, 80%. On estimated billings and the fact that people don't have meters. So we have rated those two complaints as the most crucial in that sector.
So for the foundation, what would the typical scenario be in terms of how, okay, one, you identify the problem, let's say it's inadequate metering or estimated billing. What are the steps taken to get redress?
Well, unfortunately, these two major complaints are systemic. They are not peculiar, although they are not peculiar to particular consumers that you can just walk up to them and get it resolved. This is they are consumer issues that appear to be general, and resolving them is not. I mean, it's not as easy. It's not very easy because you don't just walk up to the disco and try to resolve this particular customer's issue. The issue is systemic. It's a process that needs to be changed, and getting it resolved requires a whole lot more. It requires engagement. Even NERC is stuck. They can't seem to find a way out of here, and so we can't say we have succeeded a lot in resolving those particular issues around them. Maybe if they were talking about faults, we can actually get some action. But okay, when it comes to estimated billings and the lack of prepaid meters, it has been poor. We've been really poor in
for the prepaid meters, for the metering, I know that a number of steps, and one major step that has actually been taken is a meter asset providers, a MAP initiative that was rolled out a couple of months ago. I've spoken to some power analysts, and I've spoken to the former chairman of the NERC recently, and he said, look, it's still in implementation stages, and that's why it wasn't captured in this report. So, as you know, it's, companies coming on board, they've been given licenses to also provide meters to just help the discos out and to ease the pressure of metering across the country. So what is expected is that as time goes on, hopefully not too far, not too long from now, they will be able to roll out a significant number of meters out, and the issue of estimated billing will begin to become a thing of the past. Are you confident that this is something that we can achieve? I'm
not confident. And I'm not confident because I know that there are a whole lot of issues around this MAP intervention that are yet to be resolved. From indications, the way it's going, we don't seem to have the full support of the discos on this MAP intervention. And I'll tell you the reason why. Very simple. Right now, the greatest problem that sector is dealing with is the fact that there is no accurate enumeration of its customers. A whole lot of the system does not know who, where is using what. And so this is what gives rise to estimated billing. Because the disco does not know it doesn't have a good capture of its consumers. He only has probably a fraction of them, probably maybe 50, 70% or 60% captured in his system. So when he bills, by the time he dispenses electricity, he dispenses X amount of electricity, expecting Y amount of returns. That doesn't match up. And so what he does is that he just takes the shortfall and spreads it on the people that he can reach. So if the map people come in and properly meter the existing data that they have, their losses is probably going to go higher. Because once all of us that they've captured are metered, there's no way to pass on
the shortfall, which will remain.
Exactly. So that's one of the reasons why they're not excited about it. They are not, and then in fact, in recent times, just recently, about a month or so, suddenly the same discos that have told us that they never had, they didn't have prepaid meters, they don't have any in their store, are suddenly sending out notices to consumers. If you want prepaid meter, come and indicate and pay 35,000 for three-phase meter, 25,000 for a single-phase meter. I thought they said they didn't have any. So it is all in an effort to dampen the MAP effort, because
I mean, obviously this is going to be a problem going down the road. But whose responsibility is it to have that data? Because obviously, once the meters arrive, once these companies begin to bring out, because I know some of them will be sourced locally, once they begin to roll out these meters, it's going to be a problem, because if obviously some people will not get meters. So when we get to that bridge, that point, how are we going to proceed?
Those are the questions, I mean, they need to answer. I don't have an answer for it, but I do know that that enumeration issue, I have actually made a suggestion to NEC, which they have not done. I don't know if they've done anything about it. We're at a forum that we're looking at the implementation of the MAP initiative. I suggested to them that we need to overhaul our database when it comes to accounts in that sector. What we have right now is meters are attached to physical buildings, and the resident of that physical building is expected to pay for that, for whatever services that meter gets to use. But people move around. So they don't have a record of when anybody moves out. So every time you move into a new apartment, you probably have a backlog of bills. When there's nobody living in the house, they keep billing because it's an estimated billing. They never stop and say nobody's using it. So they keep billing it. And when I move in, I say, oh, this is a bill that's come, and this is my tenancy agreement. This is the date it starts. Your bill predates it. So clear the thing. They'll say, no, you have to pay. And I have seen situations where NEC had ruled that the new consumer should pay. These are the things that are frustrating Nigerian consumers, that make them feel they're just being exploited for nothing. If we don't change that billing system, it will be difficult to get that kind of enumeration you want. And it will be difficult to track the electricity thieves, because there are quite a whole lot of them who are silently tapping electricity from other people's lines and are keeping quiet. So the person who is paying, who is captured in the database, is the one paying for so many other people you don't know. And then two, the DISCO and NERC never do much in enlightening Nigerian consumers to help us understand the reason why we need to look out and report people who are not paying bills and are using power.
No, I mean, there are town hall meetings with the NERC is always, putting out their touting and saying, look, this is how we get across to consumers by way of enlightenment and awareness. And they talk about how they usually have a good turnout across the country where these town hall meetings hold. What are your thoughts on that?
Inadequate. That's how I would judge those town halls. You want to talk to millions of consumer base, and you only focus on a meeting, periodic meeting, that only gets about, probably at most you have a large crowd, maybe 1,000. How do you get that information to them? Because many of them don't even engage in their landlord associations and quanko, so they don't get the information. If you want to get information to a large base of consumers, you go on the platforms where they live, where they are. Do you do any outdoor adverts? That as I'm driving through the streets, I spend most of my time on the streets. Do I get to read flashes of instructions on what to do or how to do it? No. Do you do radio jingles? Because I'm in my car or I'm at home or somewhere, I tune to it. Are you on TV? They are not on all the mass media. You just call them to a small group, say you have talked to them, take good pictures, and you say you have done enough enlightenment. The level of enlightenment is too low. And because Nigerians don't understand, in fact, there are a whole lot of things that they don't understand. But because nobody's paying that much attention to it, we just want to capture them records and put in reports like this and say we have met that quota. We have not met that quota because results is not showing that people are enlightened. Many of the times, a lot of people have electricity. When they turn on the electricity, what work has both NEC, who is the regulator, and the DISCO done to enlighten Nigerians on how not to waste power? Nobody knows. You don't know how much power your TV or your AC or appliances consume, so that you can manage it well. Nobody enlightens you. Nobody tells you anything. We who know, actually, we have to go search for that information, and we don't even get the information on platforms that are local to Nigeria. We get them from other countries where they feel consumers need that information, and that's how we come and educate ourselves. But you need all that to happen in your sector for efficient management of the resources that you put out there, and for people to start having an understanding that they need to pay for whatever they use. Right now, everybody feels, if you don't give me light 24/7, why should I pay for the 2 minutes that I get in one day? These are gaps, knowledge gaps that need to be filled, and they won't be filled in one day. It will be consistent. I read a whole lot of reports coming in from the same sector in places like the UK. Constantly, there is engagement. I was standing at a train station, and I had this, you know the way the train stations are, one big, massive wall of explanation on how to use power, how to save power, and all that. So while I'm standing waiting for the train, I'm being educated on how to save power when I get home. So we need that level of efficiency. We're not getting it.
Okay, for your foundation, for the Consumer Advocacy Foundation, I mean, good thing that you know all this and you're aware and that you know that it's the right thing to do. And I know that you also, from time to time, meet with the regulator. What are the kind of conversations that you have with the regulator on these issues?
We raise the issues. We help them understand this is the mindset of the consumer. These are the gaps that need to be filled. These are steps that need to be taken to fill them. But we can only raise, we're advocates. We can only raise, we can only point it out. We can't force them to take the decisions that needs to be taken. But I think the more we talk about it, the more part of what we talk would seep into the system. Okay. But it's taking some time. Shola,
we'll take a short break. We thank you for your time so far. We'll take a short break and we'll come back and pick up from where we left off. I've been speaking to Sola Salako Ajulo, President of the Consumer Advocacy Foundation of Nigeria. We're continuing our focus on estimated billing and consumer complaints in Nigeria's power sector. Still with me is Sola Salako Ajulo, President of the Consumer Advocacy Foundation of Nigeria. Sola, thank you for your time so far. Thank you. Speaking from where we left off, you talked about the fact that the foundation meets from time to time with the regulator, the NERC, and you tell them your concerns. You even make recommendations to them in terms of how, at least on the awareness side, how they can make consumers more aware of the kind of the power they consume and how they can even better manage their power consumption. What is the usual body language or response that you get on when you have such conversations or meetings?
They appear pretty receptive, but I mean, it's one thing for you to say, oh, great idea. We would like you to do this with us, and then once we leave that for, you don't hear anything from them again. So, I mean,
do you do follow up to hold them accountable to ensure that, okay, if they've made a certain, maybe not promise, but a certain level of commitment to change something, that they're actually going to do it?
You see, the bottom line is, my business is to advocate for those changes.
Okay.
I put out that on public media most of the time to enlighten people. This is wrong. This needs to be changed. Let's all call out this regulator or service provider or all of that. But, you know, when you put too much pressure, it looks as if maybe you might have some interest. So I expect that if I've suggested to you, this and this and this are the things that we can do, I think a regulator that is serious about making a difference should call me and say, okay, look, let's sit down, let's see what, how can we get this done? Or maybe they take what you have said, take it back into their system and try to implement it. I'm yet to see a few of that. So I do as much as I can.
What about how the foundation is also sensitizing Nigerians, I mean, your fellow consumers, as to how, okay, what they can do on their own part, while the regulator is also trying to fix things on its own part? Like you said, better managing power, better power consumption habits, etc.
We do that. The only platform we use mostly is public media when they do invite us to talk about it, and social media, because we're a privately funded organization. We don't have any grants. Nobody puts money in our hands to say, use this to get the work done. So we only use platforms that we can afford. And so we do that, and a whole lot of consumers do follow us on all our platforms, and they help us share the information and all. But We are just advocates. We cannot do the work of the regulator. We cannot do the work of the service provider. We can only just supplement and assist, which we try to do. But if we had funding, maybe we can take it to the mass media platforms and get the word out more than we do now. But we try.
Okay. Now, I've spoken to, I was telling you this earlier, spoken to, I mean, power experts, even some of the discos, and many of them what they tell us is that, look, until we have cost-reflective tariffs, we're not going to see any major changes in the power sector. Many of them have huge debts on their papers, on their books, and they attribute that to the fact that they're not getting, you know, good return on their investments. What they're putting out is not commensurate to what's coming in because, like they said, we don't have cost-reflective tariffs. That's
not the reason why they don't. What they're putting out doesn't commensurate to what they're getting. And this argument of cost-reflective tariff, I have times with that number explained that it is not the first thing to do. You don't put the cart before the horse. You want to have a cost-reflective tariff in a system where there is no measuring meter to help me as a consumer gauge what I use so that I only pay for what I use. So it will be double jeopardy for the consumer. The consumer is made to pay double or triple what they pay now, and it is at the discretion of the disco to determine what they charge them, because there's nothing that measures what I use that makes my liabilities to you accurate. So if you want cost-reflective tariff, you need to first put metering implements in the consumers that you service so that they can measure what they consume. If you put a meter in my house and I know that the tariff has now gone to 40 naira or 50 naira, then you teach me how to be economical, how to manage, how to curb waste. I will not have any reason to complain, because then I know that I'm consuming I'm paying for what I consume. And so I would have to manage my consumption if my budget is is not enough for the level of consumption I do now. A lot of us waste electricity. People still don't understand why they should switch off an appliance when it's not in use. But if you have a measuring, if I have a prepaid meter and I bought a certain amount, maybe 10,000 naira, and it finishes in 3 days, I know it's prepaid, so I can't say that the disco cheated me. So the next thing I do is I go back into my house and I start looking at what needs to be switched off, what don't I need anymore, and all of those things. That's how you get that. But you can't come and tell me you want cost-reflective tariff now when I don't have a meter in my house. So that is the argument of every consumer. Nobody is going to be willing to pay more for a service that they are being arbitrarily charged for. So if they really are serious about cost-reflective tariff, the first step is to put a meter in every consumer's house. So if I have a meter and you say, oh, the cost of the electricity has gone up to this amount of money, okay, we'll grumble, but at least we'll now be able to manage our own consumption. These are real issues. Consumers, what Nigerian consumers feel strongly about is not that they don't want to pay bills, but they want to pay for what they consume. I mean, do you remember when we first started with telecoms and all that? Everybody has learned how to manage their airtime, even though those ones are taking stuff out that we still need to check. But right now, people will tell you, I can't talk for too long. My airtime is going. That's because they've seen that if I keep using it, I won't waste it. But right now, there is nothing that is measuring that. And you are asking to increase.
So for such cases, I think I asked this, but let me get better clarification. For a typical case, how does it usually get resolved? Like if you decide to take this up with perhaps a disco that services your neighborhood?
Never gets resolved. But you
would have to pay that amount?
Oh, yes. You will have to pay that amount, even if I'm going to go complain about it now. I will go and pay that amount. Then I'll do a letter and say, or what NERC says by law is I should do a letter to say I dispute this bill, and this is how much I'm going to pay, because that's what I feel I have consumed. But there's no way for them to come and verify. There's no way for them to investigate and check to ensure that what I claim I've consumed is what I've consumed. So that will always be, that balance will keep appearing on your bill.
So the consumer loses. Yes. Maybe not at first, but over time.
Either way, eventually you lose, because after some time they'll tell you we will not give you power if you don't clear that bill. So most people just go ahead and clear the bill anyway, frustrated and angry. So, and I'm saying to the sector players, you have a grossly angry and frustrated consumer base. and you want them to listen to you, they're not going to listen to you. You need to first solve that anger issue before they can start to see your points. I see it because I'm an advocate. So I know what the challenges are for the service provider. But these people are being exploited daily. And you want them in the midst of the exploitation to be concerned about your own issues. And
that doesn't make your own job as an advocate. I mean, speaking to the consumers and fellow consumers, does that make your job even a lot harder, getting them to see your own point of view and maybe a little sympathy for
I will not even start saying it. I won't say it. I say this to the service providers because I understand consumer psychology. You are not going to get me to listen to your side of the story when I feel you are cheating me every time I pay money to you. Until we resolve that, then they will be receptive to the issues and the changes. They might even bring suggestions that would help, take care of the issue. But nobody wants to budge. The DISCO doesn't want to budge. In fact, one of the things that I recommended to the NERC was that they should look at, because if you're going to meter us, even on this map, there's a crisis that is ahead in the metering, which they have not said anything about. The crisis is, by the time you sort out map, a map is moving in, the DISCO will not give that person, or will not even register that meter on their system unless all the bills on that particular account has been cleared.
Have DISCOs come out to say that?
Oh yes, that's the practice. They've been metering, they've been doing metering, they've been putting out prepaid meters. Every time they want to do that, you have to go clear that bill before you are connected again. And there are consumers who have disputed bills of thousands and hundreds of thousands on their bill, when they've just been paying their current bill, leaving these outstandings. So whether we like it or not, we have to settle the outstandings. I suggested to them, let us look at an issue of debt forgiveness. That is one of the ways to move forward. If you want to move forward, consider saying, okay, if you pay your, between this period and this period, we're about to give you prepaid meters. Between this period and this period, if you pay 50%, we'll forgive 50% so that you immediately get a fresh meter and the account is free. But nobody is willing to do that.
Because I'm also thinking about instances where some people might even dispute that, look, I don't even need forgiveness. I didn't even consume this power. I came here.
That is a second case. And I'm telling you, a lot of Nigerian consumers will just do it. If that will clear, they will just do it. Not because they feel that they owe the money, but just simply because, okay, will move me out of here finally. I would get a prepaid meter and I don't have to deal with this. They will. But somebody needs to. We have to show good faith. And we're not getting any good faith actions from the supply side.
When you put that suggestion forward to the NERC, what was the response?
They haven't responded. I wrote it in the proposal.
Okay, a proposal.
Yes, they haven't responded. It was part of a strategy on how they can get consumers to buy into the MAP initiative. Because I foresee all these challenges, that this is going to create a crisis. And the MAP investors need to be aware of what they're getting themselves into. It may not look as rosy as the system wants them to, because it looks, oh, fantastic, you're going to get it. For instance, another issue with the MAP thing. You tell me you are giving me a meter as a consumer, and I am supposed to pay for that meter. So I either pay fully at the point where you install the meter, or I spread the payment in installments over 10 years. So you'll be charging me maybe like 200 or whatever every month with my bill. So I asked two questions. Number one, we fought tooth and nail to abolish the fixed charges. You remember these days of fixed charges? Because it didn't make sense. On prepaid meters, fixed charges don't make sense. If I don't use, because you don't give me enough power, I don't use the last credit I bought, I may not come to recharge for 3 months. So by the time I come to recharge in 3 months, you say I have a backlog of bills. For what? It didn't make sense. So we eliminated that. If you bring it in this way as a MAP meter payment charge, that's like fixed deposit, fixed charges again. So that's number one. Number two, I give you, you give me a meter. I finish paying for it. Let's say I bought it outright. Who owns the meter? They say it belongs to the MAP. So why am I paying for something that doesn't belong to me?
Okay, that's interesting. Sola, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for that insightful look into, the consumer side of the power sector. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Sola Salako Ajulo, President of the Consumer Advocacy Foundation of Nigeria, looking at, of course, issues in the power sector, estimated billing, and, of course, some other issues too. That's it on Beyond Markets. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can watch all previous episodes of the show on our website at cnbcafrica.com. You can also stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Markets, and you can follow my Twitter handle too at Esther O. Awoni. For myself and the rest of the team, do have a great day.